Hello everyone, this is Neil DeConti from Neil's Model Works, and this is episode 3 of the Dragula build, going over reference and updating the chassis with that reference. Uh, as I said in the past, reference photos of the number one car, very few. There's some black and white and color photos of the original build out there. Not many though, and it's a handful. Here's a good sampling of what you get. Even if you got some good photos, the resolution's usually not the best. So it's slim pickings. So the only other thing that you can do is hopefully find photos of the actual cars. This is the number one car where it was found in Florida, I believe. I think it was back in the 80s, and even by this time, it was butchered up. The tube chassis or part of the tube chassis was replaced with a 2x4 rectangular steel, and transmission mount was changed. I'm not sure what else, but it was a mess. Now, this is the car that was hanging in the casino. I think it was the Hard Rock Casino in New Jersey for the longest time. And it was restored after that casino was closed, but the restoration didn't go all the way back. It kept the 2x4 rectangular steel chassis and some of the other components that really didn't belong there. Now, the number 5 car that was built, I believe it was around 2013 2014 for the 50th anniversary of the Munsters, and that was built by the original builder's son, and it is supposed to be the most accurate out of the 5 cars to the original. So I'm basing a lot of the reference off of that also. So that's just a little background history on the number 1 and number 5 vehicle as it is now. So it's on to the build. So first up is going to be the master cylinder handbrake that was used in the vehicle. This black and white photo from the original build of the number 1 vehicle actually shows the master cylinder that was used in the handbrake. And what's unusual about this is the bracket that's built into the back of it that would hold the brake pedal. It was hard tracking this one down, but I ended up doing it. It was through Google, I think, that I did some searches, and come to find out it was a master cylinder from a 1955 to a 1959 GMC or Chevy pickup. So these are photos of the actual stock master cylinder there. And these photos here, this is some other photos of the number 1 car hanging up at the casino, and you can see where the master cylinder is underneath there. And here's a photo of the restored number 1 car, and they did keep the original master cylinder, so that's cool. At least we had that. So in order to start constructing this one, decided to just scratch build it. Used a acrylic rod and some styrene rod to make up the basic shape, and the 2 bolt holes were made from aluminum rod. The brown section on the back of the master cylinder where the handle mounts, that was actually cardboard that I cut to shape and soaked in super glue to harden it. The handle was cut from a piece of aluminum stock and shaped, and this is the master cylinder and the cover for the master cylinder, which was painted. I ended up using Molotow chrome for the master cylinder, and the cover was just flat black. So I made this so it's actually operational, and I'm going to try to keep that as is in the finished model. So what I ended up doing was the boot for the master cylinder rod. That is going to be cast in a black dyed liquid latex, so it will actually flex. Up next, clutch pedal. On the original, I assume it was a rod assisted clutch from the pedal to the clutch itself. I pointed out on these photos locations of the clutch pedal and the lower bracket that was on the chassis. That stumped me. I wasn't sure why that was there until I saw the photos from the car hanging in the casino. There's a bump stop on the back of the clutch pedal that goes up into that metal area on the cross member. I found that interesting. So on the model, I ended up using some brass sheet cut to shape and had the holes drilled in it as the one on the vehicle was. The pedal is all brass also. That's all soldered together, and that'll have the pivot shaft in it also. And again, I'm hoping to keep this as a working part on the model itself also. Gas pedal mount is next. Hardest part on this, finding the reference. Thankfully, the car hanging in the casino tells the story. It's just a piece of flat stock welded to the chassis, and the gas pedal is bolted to it. I just replicated that with a piece of brass sheet that was cut to size and soldered to the chassis. Now, when it comes to the linkage in the gas pedal itself, that'll be interesting when it comes to modeling that. Reference on the linkage is far and few between from what I've seen. The number 5 car won't be any help. It has some hydraulic assisted gas pedal. I'm sure it wasn't like that on the original. The dreaded motor mounts. Took some time to figure this one out. On the original car, you can't see anything. In the photos that were released, the headers are in the way or something. Really difficult to find. One of my buddies helped me out with this, Richard Rubbertile. Thanks again, bud. He actually contacted Butch Patrick, Eddie Munster, and Eddie was saying that he was having a car done, and again, I believe it's the same builder as the number 5 car, so the motor mounts are fairly similar. The mounts that are on Butch's car won't work with the original because of the manifolds, the exhaust manifolds that were used on the original. But looking at some of the older photos, it looks like it's the same mount, but I believe on the original it just goes straight up into the motor mount front hole instead of a motor mount plate. So that's what I'm going with. The motor mounts were made from brass rod, a thin brass rod that would connect to the chassis, and a thicker brass rod that was the upright that would go into the motor itself. On the upright, I filed down the end to a pin that would register into the engine itself. The two pieces were soldered together. What I did was I cut a slot on a piece of board, and I laid the upright down on into the slot, and I put the U over the end up against the board and soldered it that way. Seemed to work well. nice little jig. And then the U section was cut to length and then soldered to the chassis. The transmission mount was interesting. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what to find. And I just figured it was a one rubber mount on the back of the transmission. But after looking at these photos, there was these two uprights welded to the cross member, and they have acorn nuts on the top. But I still wasn't sure. And looking at these photos and studying them a little closer, there's an aluminum plate that's on the end of the transmission casing before the tail shaft that has the two mounts that locate to the top of these shafts, and that's the transmission mount. One thing that they did on the left cross member is there's a section at the bottom which is a channel, and the shifting linkage actually goes through that channel to get up to the front of the transmission to shift the gears. Ingenious. It must be so cramped in that car to fit all this stuff. They had to think outside the box on that one. Studying these photos further, I realized the battery is behind the right-hand side of the seat. The more you look, the more you find. From these photos, it looks like a smaller battery, so I'm assuming it's a 6 volt. Here's one for reference. And so what I ended up doing was drawing it up in Blender, and I printed it out on my 3D resin printer. It's a frozen transform. So once that was printed out, I could size it for the tray that it would fit into, and I created that out of brass sheet also with the lip on it, and that was soldered to the chassis in the back there. Oh, and at the same time I realized the seat cross member had to go in. After looking at these photos, I realized there was something funky under the seat here, so I took it into Photoshop and lightened it up and realized it was a cross member, so I just made that out of the sheet brass also and soldered it in. For the steering box mount, there's nothing that I've seen from the number one car telling what they actually did, so I ended up using the video reference that I found on the number 5 car. It's supposed to be similar. I'll use that. It's basically just some flat stock steel cut to shape with some gussets in it that the steering box bolts up to. From what I've read online, on some of the forums about the Dragula, the original steering box was a Ross steering box. Again, I can't find anything on the original, so I'm gonna go with that. And I found some reference online, some photos of the Ross steering boxes. There's a few different variations, but they're all similar. So I gathered up what I could, and I ended up drawing that up in Blender also. And here's some progress shots of it. And it's a tiny piece when it's done, so it was definitely overkill on detail, but with the hood and the cockpit opening on this kit, you're gonna see it, so I felt it needed to be done. So again, sculpted it, printed it out on my frozen transform 3D resin printer, and here it is. It's tiny, but it will do the job. And I'll use some 1/16 aluminum rod for the steering shaft and the pitman arm shaft that goes out to the side of the vehicle also. That gives you an idea how small it is. Well, I hope everyone is finding this interesting. Any questions? Leave them in the comments. Feel free to subscribe, follow, ring the bell, and I'll see you on the next episode. Speaking of, this is a sneak peek at what's coming up. And this is the drawn transmission and bell housing that will be used instead of the kit piece. I just decided I couldn't do it. There wasn't enough detail there. So either scratch build onto that or just do it over. So I just decided to redraw it. So more to come. Anyways, thanks for sticking around and watching it, and hope you enjoyed it. Take care.